So, was Jason Whitlock wrong for blaming single mothers? Coming right up. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Common Sense, Logical Reason. And as always, I want to say thank y'all for joining me today. So, I'm sure by now everybody's familiar with this whole situation going on with Jason Whitlock. It's been like one of the #1 trending issues in social media, right? As a topic of black people. So much for black people being quote unquote disenfranchised. But we know he's come under fire because of an interview that he did with Tucker Carlson. Now, in this interview, he basically blamed single mothers for the Tyre Nichols situation, and it's been a firestorm. You know, he's come under attack by so many black people on this issue. And first and foremost, for those who haven't seen, let's go into the article before we start demonizing people without knowing what they said.
Everyone's behaving inappropriately, including these 5 Memphis police officers. It's an open and shut case. The camera from above captures the police doing something totally illegal. The second-degree murder charges are warranted. I don't get what people are protesting about. These are 5 black officers. The victim is black. The police chief is black. The police have been fired and charged, and they will be convicted, I would assume, by a predominantly black jury in a city that's 65% black. And this is a story about young black men and their inability to treat each other in a humane way. It looked like gang violence to me. It looked like what young black men do when they're supervised by a single black woman. And we're getting the same kind of chaos and disunity and violence that we see in a lot of these cities that are run by single mothers. If we want to discuss the breakdown of family that leads to disrespect for authority, that causes you to resist the police and run from the police and not comply with the police because you resist authority at all time because there was no male authority in your home, let's have that discussion. But that's not where they want to take us. They want to take us down the path of saying, you know what, this is Tucker Carlson's fault. This is some random this is Donald Trump's fault. It's not. It's the breakdown of family and the buying in to all these left-wing things that have nothing to do with promoting family.
So that's the interview. Now, I'll put a link in the description if you want to see the full interview, but I have to say that I agree with him 100%. But really, truly, it's just a matter of how the message was received. Either it's received from the standpoint of logic or it's received from the standpoint of being emotional. Now, if you receive it from the standpoint of being logical like me, clearly he wasn't blaming single mothers. He was blaming baby mama culture. Now, what is baby mama culture? Well, baby mama culture goes hand in hand with the Great Society, because it was the Great Society that really destroyed the black community. Okay? So, anytime you have a situation where you have a lot of women who are raising children without fathers and they're all clustered in a single area, you often, and you know, you have to throw in also, if those women are at a high rate wards of the state, then you have a situation in which they become dependent upon government. They don't have any responsibility for themselves, and we all know what happens with people who don't accept responsibility. Essentially what happens is they don't care. So they get a don't care attitude, and that don't care attitude transferred to the raising of their children. And as a result, the baby mama culture becomes an N-word factory. They produce nothing but N-words. And for those who disagree, we can go over the stacks of all the most likely of the children who grows up in fatherless homes. You know, these children are more likely to commit crime, more likely to commit murder, more likely to have behavior problems, more likely to go to jail, more likely to be suspended from school, more likely to commit rape. Of course, we know what the word rape is for the YouTube algorithm. But most importantly, these N-words are also more likely to produce children out of wedlock, which will be in fatherless homes that perpetuates the problem. And this is the problem, because if you watch his interview, he clearly says that those cops acted like thugs. They acted basically like people who grew up in conditions of single-parent households without fathers. So he was clearly blaming baby mama culture. Now, he basically came under attack by many people have been attacking him. And it's been mostly ad hominem nonsense. But there's basically two issues in particular I would like to address, proving that they were actually wrong, or showing that they were actually wrong, and showing the nonsense of the people being in emotion. Now, the first issue is he's been accused of throwing black people under the bus. Now, I will say this, that only with FBAs is telling them the truth and holding them accountable equating to throwing them under the bus. Most people, that's considered common sense. Let's hold the bad in our people accountable. But with FBAs, you hold them accountable, you're throwing them under a bus. Only with FBAs. And this is why I always say that FBAs aren't getting anywhere in America, while everybody else is just thriving. And people come to this country from the most abject poverty that you can think of, and they come to America and they thrive. But FBAs who've been here all their lives and been under white supremacy for 400 years, as they always say, for some reason they don't know how to navigate, but everybody else does, navigate all this white supremacy, which is absolutely ridiculous. But as long as FBAs are going to have a problem with being held accountable, we constantly have issues with not getting anywhere. Again, all he did was hold them accountable, and it was the same thing with Kevin Samuels. When Kevin Samuels held men accountable, nobody had nothing to say. But as soon as he started holding women accountable, all hell broke loose, and that's when he basically came under the most heat. But Kevin Samuels stood his ground, and I would say that black people are better because of it, regardless if they want to listen or not. The fact is that the truth is out there, and we see more and more men are standing up and holding women accountable for their behavior. So he did not throw anybody under the bus by telling black people the truth, or FBAs the truth that they need to hear. Now, the second issue that everybody keeps harping on is, well, where are the fathers? And I have to say, well, we all agree with this. You know, men have no problem with that. We deal with this all the time. Matter of fact, if you watch Red Pill content, Red Pill content is constantly holding men accountable. Kevin Samuels held men accountable. So it's not an issue of men not addressing where the fathers are. We know where the fathers are. They're the Pookies and Ray Rays. They are the N-words that these women keep producing. And where are they? Probably getting the next chick pregnant. Now, I find it amazing that these women sleeping with these Pookies and Ray Rays, and you know, they all had multiple children from multiple different females that they weren't taking care of, but you're gonna sleep with him and give him another child, thinking that he's not gonna do the same. We know where the fathers are. These are the Pookies and Ray Rays who are leaving all these women with babies. So why they keep having babies by them if we know that this is the baby that they've been exhibiting? So men, we hold these men accountable. But again, like I said, we know where the fathers are, but why are the mothers keep giving these dudes babies? You know, and Kevin Samuels used to give the stat all the time that a small percentage of black men are responsible for basically a disproportionate percentage of the black children that are being produced. Something like 20% of men responsible for like 60% of the babies, something like that, of black babies being born, or 80%. So a large percentage of black children are being produced by the Pookies and Ray Rays, who we know aren't going to take care of their children, which perpetuates the problem of, as I said, fatherless homes. So we know where the fathers are. We hold men accountable. We've been holding men accountable since the late 80s, early 90s. Kevin Samuels used to always talk about how men were thrown under the bus all these years. None of these women had any problem with that. And again, I know because I remember seeing it. Since the late 80s, early 90s, we've seen this whole black men ain't SHIT narrative. So what Kevin Samuels said was true. I saw it with my own eyes. And back then I knew, I'm like, that's because y'all having these kids with these thugs. I mean, you watch these daytime shows, Sally Jessica Raphael and Theo Donahue, and then you look at the men that these women are bringing on, complaining about how men ain't SHIT, and you're like, well, look at these thugs that y'all messing with. No wonder you're having problems. But anyway, we know where the fathers are. We hold men accountable, and we've been holding men accountable. The problem only existed when women started being held accountable. And really, if we want to be honest, only in the last 3 years or so, 3, maybe 4 at the most, have men been voicing their opinion and holding women accountable. And this is where all hell is breaking loose with these black females who don't want to be held accountable and who haven't had to be held accountable. But more and more, like I said, thanks to Kevin Samuels, more and more men are standing their ground and speaking the truth. But like I said, just the land this thing, Jason Whitlock was 100% right in what he said. Now, it's just people took it the wrong way because they got in their feelings. There are plenty of single mothers who raise great children. There's no doubt about it. And there'll be children who grow up in 2-parent households who go rogue and get caught up in their life. But at the end of the day, the stats don't lie. Children who grow up in single-parent households without fathers are more likely to be bad, or more likely to go rogue. That's just a fact. And when you see this happening, clustered in certain areas, all over the country, Baltimore, D.C., Atlanta, here in New Orleans, it's the same thing. Anytime you have black people clustered up in small areas and you have a lot of government dependence, it becomes baby mama culture and N-word factory. That's just a fact. But like I said, Jason Whitlock was 100% right in what he said. The fact that he's coming under attack for telling black people the truth is just so telling. It's just sad, really. When are we as black people going to accept the truth? That will be the day when black people start to make a turnaround and we stop being victimhoods and we start being victors. Anyway, y'all, that's my 2 cents on this whole Jason Whitlock story. He was 100% right, and I agree with him 100%. And as always, y'all, until next time.